mistake and they've realized they need a super genius. And then they figure out how to restart that time machine.
Great.
Come on, man.
Is that
the audience sees you when you step out of that thing?
Is this your, and you want a little arc on it too? Because if this is your idea, then you got to show up for it too.
I'll do it. I'll show up. What do I have to do?
I don't know.
I'll do whatever I have to do.
We all have to do whatever Kevin Feige says.
I'll hold the thing. I'll hold the clap thing. Do they still have that? Clap.
They do. They do. It's digital.
I'll hold that digital thing. I'll do it. But the way people would freak out if you came back. Come on.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my new Iron Man Avengers 5 video. You probably saw the news because Robert Downey Jr. has been doing all this press for his new non-Marvel movie. People have been asking him about coming back as Iron Man. This just happens to be one of the more compelling pitches that he's heard. So we'll break it all down. There's a bunch of Easter eggs in here. Inadvertently, Joe Rogan does reference some very specific Avengers stories, maybe without realizing it. So if you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the Marvel videos. We're doing a new Infinity Saga box set giveaway for all the Blu-rays. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your best theory about how to bring Iron Man back without completely undermining his sacrifice. Because that's the big question, and they kind of address it during this Joe Rogan clip, is how do you bring him back without completely undermining that great moment at the Avengers Endgame ending when he snaps Thanos away? Robert Downey Jr. also talks a little bit about some cool moments hanging out with the other Avengers actors after all this happened in real life when they're not busy filming stuff, because a lot of them don't see each other that often in real life. We'll just break this down, top 5 style, starting with number 5. So Joe Rogan's first big go-to for justifying that he come back is actually from a more practical standpoint. Marvel tries a new Avengers movie without including him, or big team-up movie, and it performs terribly at the box office by comparison. Really good example of that is Avengers Endgame. It is the highest earning movie in the history of movies now. That was that whole big run why they re-released it in theaters just so they could pass James Cameron's first Avatar movie, just so they could cross the finish line and say, we have the highest grossing movie of all time. Now, James Cameron is totally going to come back with the Avatar sequels and be like, I'm going to try and beat that again. So obviously the line is going to keep pushing forward. But the thing that Joe Rogan also addresses when he's talking to Robert Downey Jr. about Iron Man coming back is that they try these movies without him, and he suggests that maybe they don't please the fans as much. It just doesn't go nearly as well for Marvel as they would want, and that creates a real desire from a financial standpoint to try and find a way to include him in another Avengers movie, bring him back somehow. Like, is there a way we can do this without it sucking and being a total cash grab? Because movies are made to please fans, but mostly studios make movies to earn money. So number 4, when Joe Rogan is pitching Robert Downey Jr. his idea for bringing him back, his second big go-to is time travel. He says they have time travel now, and after an Avengers movie with you doesn't do well, they grab a version of Iron Man from a different point in the timeline. He steps out of the time machine to a big reveal, and everyone in the theater flips out. I do totally buy that reaction, as long as he didn't come back in Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, which is the next huge crossover mini-Avengers movie, Captain America Civil War style, because it's got Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange ripping the multiverse wide open. But the story Joe Rogan is inadvertently referring to when he's trying to pitch this time travel idea, maybe without realizing it, is Young Avengers. Young Avengers is mostly known for being a time travel heavy franchise. Kang the Conqueror, one of the most famous Young Avengers villains, also one of the most famous Avengers-level time travel villains that Marvel has not used yet.
I love you as Iron Man, so I would, if they opened up this time machine and you popped out, I just imagine the moment where everybody goes f***ing crazy. It would be amazing.
Could be great.
So number 3, WTF. Marvel and Kevin Feige have spoken publicly about how they've been considering a Young Avengers movie or a Disney Plus series for a long time now. It's just a question of setting the table in terms of introducing the characters and the story concepts that you would need for that movie. Time travel is a really good example. You have to introduce concepts in the MCU before you do a big movie based on that concept. Like they introduced the concept of the multiverse in the first Doctor Strange movie, then they introduced the quantum realm in the first 2 Ant-Man movies. Then during Avengers Endgame, they combine those 2 concepts and lean on them really heavy to create their solution for saving the universe. Now that they've introduced time travel to the MCU, they can use it as a story device in a much bigger way in a new movie. Young Avengers is just the perfect movie for that. They've even almost introduced half of the original comic book Young Avengers team, or will by the end of Marvel Phase 4. You have teenage Cassie Lang, aka Stature. She has the same basic powers as Ant-Man and the Wasp. There's the Iron Lad character last seen during Iron Man's funeral at the end of Avengers Endgame. She-Hulk is going to debut during the Marvel Phase 4 She-Hulk series if they're not going to do the Hulkling character. I've also heard rumors about him, but we know that they're doing She-Hulk. There's the Kate Bishop Hawkeye that's debuting during the Hawkeye series, and then Wiccan and Speed that seem like they're coming during the Scarlet Witch WandaVision series. There's still a couple years to decide which characters they want to include, but there were 6 original Avengers on the first team. I think there should be 6 members on the first version of the Young Avengers team, just for that nice symmetry. And if Robert Downey Jr. really wants Joe Rogan to participate, like if I'm doing it, you're coming with me, you can give him a cameo as himself, like Joe Rogan just passing by them on the street. Number 2, the next big solution for bringing Iron Man back without completely undermining his sacrifice would be to have a major Marvel villain try to steal his legacy in a much bigger, more literal way than Mysterio did. Think about what Norman Osborn did in the comics after Civil War and the events of Dark Reign, the Dark Avengers, twisting the legacy of Iron Man in a way that's cool, but also feels so wrong that you want something to happen to bring them down. That's a cool twist on bringing Iron Man back, just to slap Norman Osborn around. You could totally do that without having to bring Tony Stark back from the dead. You can do it with an artificial consciousness of Iron Man. In the comics, he's backed up his consciousness many times. They kind of iced his body after Civil War too. For a hot minute, you had a Jarvis version of Iron Man wisecracking his way through the comics, helping out the heroes, sassing the villains, even though I wasn't a huge fan of that comic book run in general. I know you're all keen to have Dr. Doom show up in the MCU. That time when Iron Man became an artificial intelligence, the person that came to try and literally steal his legacy was Dr. Doom. But the big twist with that event in the comics is that it was Dr. Doom trying to be a hero, not like Norman Osborn Iron Patriot during the Dark Avengers. We've seen rumors that Dr. Doom is going to be the villain of Black Panther 2. I don't know if those rumors are true, so if they're not going to go straight for Norman Osborn in the Sinister Six movie, Dr. Doom would be the next option for that. But here's the big thing though, number 1 WTF, it seems very obvious that the Sinister Six is being teased in the Morbius trailer and all the Spider-Man crossover stuff that Sony and Marvel are cooking up with the Vulture showing up at the end of the Morbius movie. After watching that scene, it really does feel like a Sinister Six movie is happening within the next couple of years after Spider-Man 3 at some point. So it would be stupid to not introduce an MCU version of Norman Osborn at some point to be the man pulling all the strings. Longtime comic book Sinister Six fans will remember that Dr. Octopus created the first Sinister Six team, but there's still a mysterious quote-unquote benefactor villain in the MCU that Sonny Burch was working for during Ant-Man and the Wasp. They had billions of dollars to throw away, and they didn't take no for an answer. There are only a couple of characters in the comics that are capable of doing something like that. And we know Sinister Six is happening at some point. It just makes sense that that person in the MCU would be Norman Osborn. Let me know in the comments, though, based on what Joe Rogan is pitching for bringing Iron Man back, if it does go down that way, what would you want that to look like? Bringing him back using a time travel twist. How would they do that without undermining his sacrifice during Avengers Endgame?
And I got to go have dinner with a bunch of the Marvel folks last night and kind of have just a little bit of extra closure because, you know, the movie came out and it, you know, was bananas, and the directors are sending me pictures of like people flipping out in theaters when Tony snaps, and I was like, whoa, this is kind of like a really big cultural thing. But then like Victoria Alonso, who's the head of VFX for all these movies, a literal super genius, or Kevin Feige or Favreau or Scarlett, or some people that I've just been there with it for a long time. We were there experiencing it all when it came out. And then we see each other on a red carpet, and it's not intimate. And then we kind of hadn't really had a chance just to do nothing, just hang out and, you know,